So actually, I was reading a lot of this about Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and they said, "Oh, his biography doesn't really matter. The political treatise, the ideas that come from." Well, no, biography does matter. It shows how people are violent against, mediocre minds are always violent against great spirits. It's Albert Einstein quote, but that's the biography definitely matters. Jean-Jacques Rousseau got all this pain and all this pushback and persecution from the Catholic authorities, from the so-called authorities or what have you, and they were wrong. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was 100% right, and his ideas led to the French Revolution. Okay, so if people paid attention to Jean-Jacques Rousseau during his lifetime, they would have realized that he was right. But instead, there was violent opposition to him. They burned his books. They pushed him into exile. They tried to get him arrested. Another person that's good. So political science, you got the Prince, Machiavelli. Niccole Machiavelli, who wrote the Prince, and that's like sort of the standard for political science, because he says that the morals doesn't matter. It's all about the politics. So it's all about the manipulation of people in power to get over on somebody else, and that's all that matters. Is the morals don't matter, but just about how the history and how people view you is the only thing that matters. Now the Prince, I had read an article on crack.com that actually had pointed out that it turns out that he was in jail when he had written this. He had been thrown out of a building, broke his leg, and then he was in jail for a long time. And then he was writing this treatise for the Medicis, for the people that had injured him and done all these horrible things to him. So why would he do that? Well, part of it is maybe he just wanted to get back into power and into good graces with them. But the other part was he was doing a Stephen Colbert tongue-in-cheek. Oh, who cares? The morals don't matter. Just get power, get strong. That's all that matters. So that would totally change the entire flavor of what the Prince is all about if it was all just one big tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic sort of book that was sitting there saying, like, it doesn't matter if you're good or bad, just as long as you in. So there's a lot of implications with Machiavelli's The Prince, like the state. You hold on to your state at all costs, because nobody loves a person who loses their country or who loses their state. So at all costs, you always hold on to the state no matter what. So that means Gaddafi would be right, that Syrian leader would be right, and all these other horrible sort of amoral conclusions. And then you also have the 48 Laws of Power, which is sort of the updated version of Machiavelli's The Prince. So the point is, the biography of the person definitely matters. So I'm going to keep going with this is the 11 alternatives to education, okay? And so I'm having a conflict actually with Spalding University. They want to sabotage me and ruin my entire career. They was trying to ruin me when I was in the classroom, and it's incredible actually how evil some people could be. They hear about someone being wicked, and they'll defend other wickedness before they actually. Paulo Freire says that's a fear of freedom. When you start to treat people as you'd want to be treated yourself, then that sort of sets you on a different path than how people traditionally have been in. And it's also white women too. So white women all throughout the world have been oppressed, and they're getting raped and mutilated, and there's a female mutilization or genital mutilization where they cut the clitoris out, and then there's domestic violence. So they have a lot to they got to cover themselves up. But in America, that's not the case at all. They've had the right to vote for hundreds of years or 100 years, nearly 100 years. They've had they get the good jobs. They're getting paid. So there's a woman actually that lives right next door to me, and she's sort of. She's not that bright and she can't drive, but she's sort of, I can understand why she's like, sort of like, oh, you must do as I say, because she's probably scared. In life, she has to have her man and her children kind of with her, because if they don't stay with her, then, she's going to break apart. And what is she going to do? She needs her man. She needs, so she's relying on that. And so that's why she's kind of like, do as I say. And in a way, I feel, sorry for her. I feel more naive. But because of her sort of like, fascist persona, or her sort of, oh, I'm going to be mad because I'm manipulating, controlling everybody, I stay away from her. Like, that is terrifying to me. That's like I said, I have more pity, and so I can understand wanting to protect and do everything and give her feminine privilege for that. But if you're in the workplace, no, I'm not getting any love from you. There's a husband. He's getting sex. That's in exchange for sex. He's gives her protection and takes care of her kids and pays the bills. But in a professional environment, no, you're the exact same. You're just like me, okay, in this. in this world. And if you won't listen to my orders, then I won't listen to your orders. It's equality. You know, there's more women graduating college and women are getting into the job forces. And the men, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with man shit. So don't think that I'm, you know, taking it easy on the men, because ultimately that's where 95% of the world's problems come from, are the dumb things that men do to their sons. So, you know, that's the women are sort of trying to be like the men, or they see that this is how fascist men act. But a lot of the times, you know, I was in school, and you know, there's lots of women. It was West Point, and there's this 10-year-old girl that was like sitting there like yelling at me, and she had just got yelled at by the teacher, and the teacher says, "Oh, I would not take those looks from a 6th grader," right? So the teachers are completely psychotic. They use all these control and divide and conquer tactics. And I remember Mrs. Gupton, Carrie Gupton, she had said, I'd asked about who's got more power in society, men or women, and I was like, every heterosexual relationship that I've ever been in, the woman wins. But the principal was a man, right? So, like, I see that there's the intersectionality of it is really confusing. But I'd asked her who has more power, and then she was like, somebody said, the lady, another woman had said the men, and then Carrie Gupton says, yep, yeah, the men, yep, they sure do. I was like, oh my God, I don't even want to talk to a person like that. I don't even want to talk to a person like that. She is the most controlling, vindictive human being possible and alive out in this world. And she wants to sit there and say she's oppressed. No way she's oppressed. She is comfortable. She has everything that she needs in life. Her entire life is about putting oppression on others. That's all she does. She just works on manipulating and oppressing other people. It's like she has had no struggle whatsoever, and her struggle is to make other people struggle worse. And that's the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Even the Ku Klux Klan was defending white women. When have white women, you know, when have they had to struggle? So, like, you know, if you were ugly, I can understand, you know, I'm a feminist, so I believe that women should be allowed to work and be equal. I grew up, you know, around a child-beaten wife beater, and I'm 100% against that. But it seems like there's no middle ground. It's like if you're not lording over the woman, then the woman feels that she can lord over you. And that I cannot stand a hierarchy. The will to power is what messes up every relationship, and that's William Glasser. That's William Glasser. So, okay, I went on a whole nother tangent there. But I am in a conflict with Spalding University, so it's like, why am I getting all this pushback? Like, seriously, the woman that is screwing me over stole $50,000 away from me as a white woman. For 3 months, we had this independent class where I wrote the 11 alternatives to education down. I wrote 11 alternatives, and I would meet up with her on Tuesday at 1 p.m. every week. There was no threat. There was nothing scary about it. She would even close the door. We were in a safe, equal spot. I would talk about different ideas of education I'm coming across. She would talk about, you know, she would give me her reactions to what I was doing. I wanted to write 2 pages, 2 10-page papers, and give a presentation. So I went ahead and dictated the homework that I was going to put on myself. And then she was the person who was going to administrate that. So we would have one-on-one conversations, and by that human connection, right? Instead of just being an oppressor, there was a human connection, and the administrator had pushed me to do this, and so she pushed me to do something I wanted to do myself, and I was able to write 150 pages. So wonderful, great. But then as soon as I go into the classroom to student teach, immediately she just snaps and becomes a whole nother psychotic fucking person. She immediately blindly endorses the person that I was with, and she's got friends. So I mean, I don't know if she's going along with the friends, if she's always been wicked, if she thinks men are beneath women, or the last thing, which I think is probably the best one. That's why I'm talking about Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Francisco Ferrer-y-Guardia. And Francisco Ferrer-y-Guardia and Jean-Jacques Rousseau are being persecuted in their time because they were right. They were saying ideas that was smart, they were right, and because my freedom and democratic ideals insults her entire lifetime of oppressing her students, you know, instead of saying, well, maybe you have a point, you can do things your own way, the psychopathic oppressor, fascist, totalitarian Nazi says, absolutely not. We will not have any cracks in the dam. We need to have a united front, right? They believe in solidarity when it comes to oppression. All of us oppressors are together, and we're going to smash those kids, and we're going to smash the students into compliance and submission. 100% compliance. That's what they believe. That's to teach like a champion. 100% compliance. So what changed? You know, for 3 months, you know, there was no, when you treated me like a person, then there was no, you know, issues. When you started to oppress me, and I started to say, whoa, you know, I don't really like, and I wasn't mean, I didn't cuss, all I wanted was a conversation about the 1855 Know Nothing riots, and I would have taken, you know, if she says don't talk about it because I have a reason, but she didn't even have a reason. Her reason was, I am the teacher, this is my classroom, because I said so, okay? You are nobody, you're beneath me, you will do as I tell you. And that, I have a problem with that. If I can't even get a conversation, how am I supposed to cooperate or work with somebody else when I can't even get a conversation with her? That's not equality. That's not even close to any type of equality. That was strict hierarchy. I'm a dog slave. Nobody, shut up, get in line. And when you're sitting there breathing down my neck, do this, do that, do this, do that, that makes me nervous. I'm not confident. I need the confidence when I get up into class. And so basically she was smashing my soul. So I couldn't inspire the children the way I wanted to inspire them, because she wanted me to be a fascist, soulless person just like her. And so I think I'm insulting their entire lives with my writings. And so the same thing with Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and the same thing with Francisco Ferrer y Guardia. So, carrying on. Okay, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, heavily criticized by the Archbishop of Paris. Both of the books were burned by the authorities in Geneva, Switzerland. In Paris, as in Geneva, they ordered the book to be burned and the author arrested. All the Marechal de Luxembourg could do was provide a carriage for Rousseau to escape from France. So the Marechal de Luxembourg, I guess that's like his friends, they helped him get out of, to escape from France. Get out of France, you know, while you still got your head. They burned his books in Geneva, they burned his books in Paris, and they confiscated all that, so nobody had the books, right? They publicly burned them, publicly condemned them, and then they wanted a warrant out for his arrest. Okay? So there's a lot of parallels. There's a lot of parallels with how Spalding universities treat me and Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Francisco Ferrer y Guardia. So then he goes to France, and then he renounces his Genevan citizenship in the next year, 1763. Then he becomes a fugitive, and then he spends the rest of his life moving from one place to another in exile, sort of just like Ronnie Lee Smith, who was a political prisoner. He was, politically assassinated. On May 27th, 1762, this is the date, okay? This is today's date, okay? So, Rousseau's Emilia was put on sale in Paris. So, happy Emilia Day, okay? May 27, 2014, right? This has been, I don't want to do the math right now, but let's see, 1762, that's 838, plus 200, 238, plus 14, so what's 238 plus 14? 238, 14, 2, carry the 1. 252 years ago, Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote Emilia, and he put it on sale in Paris, okay? So happy Emilia Day. This is Emilia on Education Day for Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Apparently with tacit permission from the censors. So at first they said tacitly, yeah, you can go ahead and do it. They didn't tell him not to do it. But as soon as they did it, then the Calvinist censors and the French Catholics. So it would be interesting to see who these Calvinists are. I think the Calvinists believe in they're Christians. They believe in predetermination. Everybody, God chose some to go to heaven, some go to hell right from the get-go. There's really nothing you can do to change that. And then the French Catholics, right? So the Catholics are the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, the Hitler, Mussolini, the Russian czars. The Catholic Church for about 1,000 years or so was the bloodiest. They were the ones that was killing everybody everywhere. They wanted to make sure all the kings and the monarchists had the priest inside their court, so that way they could maintain power, accumulate land, accumulate power, and that's what the Catholic Church was all about, gaining more and more power. So Jean-Jacques Rousseau, May 27th, 1762, he puts Emilia for sale in Paris, okay? So here's a book, Emilia, let's go out there. I believe I bought this for like 20 bucks. So we're allowed to buy the books now, but we're not allowed to use them, apparently. So apparently with tacit permission from the censors, he sells it, and then on June 3rd, several days later, right, maybe a week later, the police confiscated the book, right? Get all the book out from the streets. And then 4 days later, June 7th, it was attacked at the Sorbonne. On June 9th, at the Parliament of Paris, a court, not a legislature, condemned the Emilia and ordered the arrest of its author. So on June 9th, eventually they ordered the arrest of his author. So how dare you say these ideas? So, I mean, are they just Nazi oppressors who just can't, wait to smash me? Like, it's incredible. I'm a smart person who want to, do something good, and I want to teach in a different way. I can teach in the establishment as is, and I will raise the grades, and we will have good grades, and I will, bring the numbers. If you give me a year, if you give me a chance, I will show that my teaching tactics are effective. I will raise the grades, and even though the teachers and other people might resent my ways, because I'm coming back with educated children who understand, who are doing well in the AP test and are earning college credits, and who are, the standards and the grades are being raised, then you will keep me, because the numbers don't lie. You can't mess with the numbers. If I can teach, in a democratic and freedom setting with structure, right, democratic structures, and be successful at it, then you should definitely keep me on. I just feel like they don't want to give me the chance, because I will be the best teacher that anybody has ever seen. I will make it interesting. I will say, facts that are actually relevant to people's lives, and they will be, I will actually care about the person's, their personhood first, because you can't just say sit down, shut up, and then shove stuff in their throat and then pretend like you love them. No, not at all. If they're getting robbed, or if they're homeless at home, or if they're getting beat up at home, right? That's Gallatin County education system. I'm getting beat up at the house, and then they're ordering me around at the school. At what point did I have a choice to do anything? I was doing what I thought I was supposed to do, being obedient, listen to what the adults had told me to do, and nothing good had come from it. They didn't actually care about my life. If they would have actually said, "Oh, you're getting beat up at home, well, let's protect your life first," and then then maybe the calculus and the math that we're teaching you will be relevant. When someone said, "Why don't you be an engineer?" I thought about it for half a second. Then I went home and I had to do a bunch of dishes and do a bunch of tobacco work, and I'm out in the slaves, they're out in the field slaving away. So I thought about engineer for a second. I didn't know what it meant, and then that was it. I'm really talented at math. I'm really talented at my studies and my schooling, but nobody actually embraced me and pushed me along. The counselor at Gallatin County High School, it said something about like a scholarship, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm not even going to go to college." She was like, "Oh, okay," and then threw it away, and just, that was it, right? Threw my entire future away in 2 seconds, and that was because Mary Beth Herndon Flynn, she was a psycho oppressor who was boring and made everybody do as she said. I would fall asleep. She would send me to the principal's office. She was best friends with the counselor. So, the politics is totally screwed. I'm a Machiavellian. I'm a political science major. I understand how politics works. And all these, these authoritarian, dictatorial classes, all they're doing is just ruining people's reputation. Oh, you have an independent thought? Well, everybody look at this. That guy is an aberration. You do not have humanity. Do not show your humanity. Do not show any independent thought in the classroom. That is not what we want to see around here. So, they order his arrest on June 9th, okay? So, hopefully they're not going to order my arrest, and hopefully they don't burn any of my books, but we'll find out, okay? They condemned Emilia and ordered the arrest of its author. June 9, 2013, that afternoon, warned of his actions, Jean-Jacques fled the French capital. Now, I'm getting the hell out of here, right? 2 days later, Emilia was burned in Paris, while in Geneva, both the Emilia and social contract were confiscated. And then June 19th, authorities of Rousseau's native city burned books and ordered his arrest. So both Geneva and Paris are doing the exact same thing, confiscating the books, burning his books, ordering for his arrest. How dare you write that man is born good, right? Just that idea that our human nature, that we are born good, that's why he's getting arrested. 1762, Rousseau flees France. He is forced to flee France. Rousseau sought refuge at Yverdun in the territory of Bern. When Rousseau got to Yverdun in the canton of Bern, which I'm not even sure where any of this stuff is, then the government ordered his expulsion. So the first place he runs to, Yverdun in the canton of Bern. Actually, let's find out where Yverdun is, okay? A quick Google search, find out where Yverdun. And we're going to see, actually, Rousseau goes through different channels. He's going to keep on running and keep on going to these different spots, and then eventually, eventually he dies or whatever. But this man should have been embraced like Tesla. Tesla wasn't a genius, and they burned his papers and they burned everything that he wanted to have free electricity for everybody. Well, the industrialist capitalist, which is being defended by the Julie Chancellors of the world, they had burned his materials because they didn't want to have free electric put out for everybody. So, Yverdun, Switzerland. Yverdun, Les Bains, municipality in the district of Canton of Vaud, Switzerland. So he runs out of France, and then he goes to another place in Switzerland. So I guess maybe another city-state. When that city-state had heard that he was in town, then they expelled, they told him to get on down the road. We don't want your freedom and democracy kind around here. But you actually respect your children? You're not beating the crap out of them? Hitler, his dad beat the crap, Hitler was beat up as a child. And you don't see the direct correlation. You know, he admired his oppressor father. He became the oppressor himself, and the children were the scapegoat. He made the Jews the scapegoat, and then he was able to, you know, do as I say, right? So when Rousseau got the Yver done and the cannon burned, the government ordered his expulsion. Expelled by the Bernese authorities, he found asylum in Motiers, Motiers, a village in the Prussian Principality of Neuchâtel Hair in 1763, where he renounced his Genevan citizenship. So it doesn't really matter, but Motiers is a village. It says in the Principality of Neuchâtel, the Prussian. So this is Germany. He runs in Germany. Motiers is a territory controlled by Frederick the Great of Prussia. So this is 1762, right? This is before the reform of the Prussian education system. This is when Prussians had more freedom. The Prussians were a warlike people, but they were the strongest of all the Germans. There's about 39 speaking German countries, and Prussia was the strongest of all of them. So let's see, a territory is controlled by Frederick the Great of Prussia, granted Jean-Jacques petition for asylum. So my God, okay, so the French didn't like him, the Switzerland people didn't like him, Geneva didn't like him, another town didn't like him. They kicked them all out, all these cities, and he runs to Germany, where this, you know, this dictator, this guy who's actually like a Hitler, right, before Hitler or so, a warmonger, Frederick the Great, he actually grants Jean-Jacques petition for asylum. So even though these oppressors force these worker bees and force these soldiers to do as they're told, when it comes down to actual intellectual thought and scientific progress, people actually respect that. So, you know, people might hate Einstein's beliefs. He was a pacifist, but he knew the relativity, you know, the theory of relativity. So, you know, they might hate all these, you know, they have an anti-intellectual basis, but ultimately when they get power, they want the scientifically and technologically astute things that are provided for everybody. They want these things. And so that's, you know, it's actually good, I think, in some respects, that this Prussian dictator had saved Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So thank God for Prussia to protecting Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now, they could have also had their own ends to do it too, okay? But it seems like Edward Snowden, right? He's being protected in Russia by Putin. He's a dictator he doesn't believe in freedom of speech. But you know, he's able to protect someone else because it makes America look bad, and for his own reasons. So you know, sometimes you can have a benevolent dictator who actually does the right things with these individuals. So Rousseau lived in exile in Prussia. He endured the persecution, but they said he became paranoid. Well, you know, everybody's persecuted him. Why wouldn't he be paranoid? And he's finding refuge among dictators. More of Rousseau's books were burned later in The Hague and in Paris. Where's The Hague at? So The Hague. The Hague is what's Hague? Is that Bohemia? Is that Czech Republic? I got slow internet. So sorry about the slow internet. But I guess I can review. Let's see, black schools, you got self-education, you got Waldorf, you got Montessori. Just keep saying these over and over again, because these models, these alternative models for education, is what's going to make the postmodern university for revolutionaries, for people that want to treat each other as equals instead of being all about the will power and controlling over us. William Glasser is a genius, okay? He comes up with the choice theory, and then he comes up with the some sort of, God, I forget what it was, but some sort of psychology thing where he was talking about how basically there is no such thing as insanity, but there's the inability to communicate with those that you love. And so that inability to communicate with those that you love is where the insanity comes from. And why won't some people just won't listen? Some people don't want to listen. You know, they want to manipulate and control you. So to actually listen would mean that you have to have a genuine interest and actually have to care about them. Okay? So William Glasser is genius, okay? I really enjoy William Glasser. But I'm checking out where The Hague is, okay? And The Hague, Hague, is a seat of government in the Netherlands, okay? The capital city in the province of South Holland. So The Hague is in the Netherlands, okay? So you got the Netherlands, right? They're burned. Okay, so the Netherlands is burning his book. Paris is burning his book. Geneva is burning his book. That same year, Rousseau fled Motiers, okay? So eventually he fled again. And this was after a nearby pastor had preached a sermon attacking him, and his house was stoned. So he was in Motiers, which is in Prussia, modern-day Germany. They're burning his book in Netherlands and in France and in Switzerland. His house was stoned, so a pastor, right, good old religious person, I don't know what kind of religion he was, probably Christian, preached a sermon attacking him in his house. How dare you talk about the freedom of the child and saying that, you know, when a person is born, they're good. How dare you talk about the Native Americans like they were good people. The publication of his letters, In Critis de la Montagne, something else he wrote, 1764, which he defended Emilia and criticized established Reformed churches, aroused the wrath of the New Chattel clergy. So he's in the district of New Chattel. He's in Motiers, which is, I would like to know exactly where that is because there was change in borders. It might not be, actually. It might be in Poland or something. But it's most of Prussia was in Germany. So Motiers, where are we at? Okay, so the wrath of the New Chattel clergy. So he's getting this pastor in Germany, in Prussia, that's you know, preaching against him. His house was stoned, and then then Jean-Jacques Rousseau fled to the Isle of Saint Pierre and the Lake of Biel. The Isle of Saint Pierre. So where's the Isle of Saint Pierre? I don't know. In the Lake of Biel, immortalized in the Fifth Promenade. See, I guess he wrote another book while he was there. It was abruptly ended by an order of expulsion by the Bernese. So let's see where the Isle of Saint Pierre is. So, you know, the poor Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he writes a book about the, you know, the freedom of man and how, you know, we're born good in civilization that's corrupting us. And so he's an iconoclaster. He's attacking civilized society. But he's right. He's 100% right. I know for my own self, like, I'm born good. Like, you know, I did all the things that I was told to do because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Out of love for these people, I thought if you did what they wanted to do, they would respect you. That never does it. Subordination and blind obedience never gets their respect. It never does. Malcolm X is totally right. Only when black people stand up and say enough is enough will they ever get respect. That doesn't guarantee the respect. They might get gummed down when they do that. But by always being compliant and always capitulating, look at the Native Americans. They signed treaty after treaty, right? They tried to listen to the white Europeans, but those who had signed the treaty, when I look back into history now, they're the ones that had sold their people out. They signed the treaty, they sold their people out, they got pushed off the land. Those who said, no, we're not going to go nowhere, we're going to fight, those are the ones that make sense to me. This is our homeland. You're not going to push us off our homeland. This is where we live. You live. Or you leave. So the Isle of Saint Pierre. See, the Isle of Saint Pierre. Oh. Okay, so it's all in different language. It says it's in the Puchoy-Charentes region. Europeans, you're all names and places. Confusing. But let's see. Let's see. The Switzerland, they were burning his books. The Netherlands were burning his books. The French were burning his books. Southwestern France. Okay, so he actually goes back to France. So okay, so he goes back to France, right? And I'm going to finish up with Rousseau, and then we're going to get to Francisco Guardia, Ferry Guardia, and then we're going to actually get to the 10 alternatives, okay? My God, this might be 2 hours, but you know what? All these ideas matter. This is the PDF I said was going to actually represent the spirit, but these videos can represent the spirit. You know, anybody who goes to the Jean-Jacques Rousseau University, or who goes to the Postmodern University, I think the Revolutionary Postmodern, the Postmodern University for Revolutionaries. So I think it might just be shortened up to the Postmodern University. So anybody who goes to the Postmodern University, you should watch all these videos, because this is where the heart and soul of what it is that I'm talking about is coming from. This is where the Constitution is going to come from. This is where democracy is going to come from. The town hall meetings, the free educational exchange. I don't know, there was some student union that had like millions of dollars that they had dealt with, but then here at student councils at U of L, at Spalding University was basically dormant, right? They were just being obedient to the administration, so they didn't actually represent the students, just like none of the teachers or the oppressors or the administration actually represent the students. They're taking $50,000, they're fattening their pockets up with our money, and they're not teaching anybody anything except for you need to shut up and just sit down. And I hope their lives are miserable because of that. You have Jennifer Mangio's taking all this Paxil. Well, you know, when if all you're doing is oppressing the hell out of everybody, people let you be free and you're going to do what you want to do, right? Nobody can mess with a pretty woman, right? Pretty woman in society is privileged. But if all you're doing is oppressing everybody, well, then that means you're taking their soul, and you're taking their freedom, and you're taking who they actually are away. No wonder you're going to be depressed, because that's got to be exhausting to always manipulate and control people. Whereas where I'm saying, I'm not saying being unintrusive, but I'm saying least intrusive, where you lay back, let people be themselves, let their educational, their program and where they want to go with their own education, let them guide themselves. People know themselves best. They know where they want to go in life the best. They can make their own decisions. They're their own best defenders. They're their own best allies. So you should allow people to be their own best allies. You should allow that should just happen. Okay, so see, his house is stoned, and then he goes to the Isle of St. Pierre, right, which is in France. Finally, through the good offices of the British philosopher David Hume, he settled at Wotton, Derbyshire, in England in 1766. So David Hume, another philosopher, was actually saying, hey, I'll give you a space to stay. Hume managed to obtain from George III. You remember George III? George III was the tyrant, the British monarch, who the American, George Washington and Franklin and all the rest of them declared war against. So George III is actually going to be the one who gives refuge to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, just like Frederick the Great of Prussia, right? Another tyrannical person gives, refuge for this intellectual genius. So he managed to obtain from George III a yearly pension. So not only did he find a place, but he was going to get paid. He was going to get paid. Eventually, Jean-Jacques Rousseau believed that Hume was in the league with his Parisian and Genevan enemies. So his enemies from Paris and Geneva, he thought that David Hume was in cohorts with them, in cahoots, and he may very much could be. I mean, I'm not actually. I will go along with Jean-Jacques Rousseau in that his intuition was correct, and refused the pension, then openly broke with David Hume. Hume denied it, but is it very possible? George III. Is it possible that George III might have been a corrupt, tyrannical, piece of shit that's going to fuck over Jean-Jacques Rousseau and send him back to Paris and Geneva so they can arrest him and try him and probably kill him there? Probably. Spanish Inquisition, I mean, that's 1492 in the Crusades. I don't know how, is the Catholic Church still murdering people this time? If they're still murdering people, he's looking at death. You're going to see Francisco Ferrer-Eguardia, he got gunned down in 1900s. That's less than 100 years ago in Spain. He got gunned down and murdered in Spain because he wanted to have a free school. So that's Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He gets George III yearly pension for Rousseau. He thought he was in league with him, so eventually Jean-Jacques Rousseau returns to France under a false name, and then he accused Hume of disloyalty. So that's sort of the biography that I had been able to gather roughly of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. There's actually not much information out there, not many YouTubes about Jean-Jacques Rousseau, but that's the information that I was able to find. He writes this book, he writes Emilia, he writes Social Contract, and then he's just on the run for, what year was that, 1762 or so? So eventually 1766, right? So for about 4 or 5 years, he's just running from to Switzerland, running to Germany, to Prussia, to the Netherlands to burn his book, to France, and then he goes back to France, and he goes to England, and then eventually he sneaks back into France under an assumed identity, and hopefully he is allowed to live. So for about the next 20 years or so, he's going to still continue to write and continue to work. So evidently he was able to find some safe place or safe haven for himself. But for 5 years of his prime, right, because those books had they changed society. Even today in 2014 in the United States of America, these books are valued, right? They show that Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he would even be possibly persecuted today. Edward Snowden, all he did was he's a whistleblower. He said, look, the NSA is committing crimes against people. Bradley Manning, he saw murders happen against Reuters reporters. That's a war crime. And for reporting a war crime, we're sending white men into prison. We're persecuting these white guys. To say that just because you're a white man, you're privileged. Malcolm X Debate Club don't know what the hell they're talking about. Malcolm X Debate Club at U of L is being run by white women, and white women are way more privileged than white men. It's not even a contest. I think it's actually, the whole debate is absolutely stupid. So if anything, if men are believing that white women are the oppressed and how they're the ones that are manipulated, if that was true, then women would be, champion my cause because I am a feminist and I believe in equality. But at this point in a relationship, I hope for equality, okay? I hope for equality. I don't think I'll get it. I think I need to be strong and wealthy and be able to provide and protect her, possibly have jobs, opportunities for jobs. So, help her get money, help her establish herself in her own independence. But to think that a woman will ever be a foundation or a solid rock for me, I think there would be few and far between. There's some women out there, but in general, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, you're the man. You lose. It's it's socially unacceptable to hit a woman, and that's why just basically if I remember at this party I was with Catherine Getz at Xavier University, and she was talking all this shit to this dude, and the dude was like, trying to talk back to her, but he got mad at her, and he was like, you know what, you keep on talking, I'm going to hit your boyfriend in the face. And I'm like, my God, I'm just standing here. She's the one saying the stuff, but because, he couldn't actually defend against her just with logic and reason, he, wanted to resort to violence, but he couldn't resort to violence against her, so he had to attack any male that was around her. And that's ridiculous. Thou should not hit anybody. Violence is just wrong by itself. No, you should not hit a man. A man shouldn't hit a woman and child because they're so much stronger and bigger than them, but they also shouldn't be victimized by somebody that is so much smaller than them too. So, equality is the only way out of this. Hierarchy destroys relationships. Read William Glasser. They mentioned him. They talked about William Glasser, but they didn't actually apply any of his ideas. They talked about the learning pyramid and Maslow's hierarchy, but they didn't actually, and co-teaching tactics, but all those things are just words. They put it on a PowerPoint. You're just supposed to memorize it and write it down, but you're not actually supposed to practice these concepts and these ideas. So true equality, we don't know what it looks like. Oppressors and the oppressed need each other. They have a fear of freedom. They feel like someone has to be the boss and someone has to be the slave. Absolutely not. In order to talk, you have to sit there and actually really talk to somebody, hear what they're trying to say. They listen to you, and then there's some new consensus or a new sort of framework that is that comes from that. And that's like I said, that's the learning pyramid, and that's we learn through discussions, we learn through practicing, doing, and teaching others. So when we actually learn to start talking to each other, we will learn so much more. When we actually sit down and actually hear what the other person is trying to say, we will learn so much more. Experience and teaching others. So teaching others, the only person in the classroom that's learning anything is the teacher, because all the students is only retaining 5% of their boring ass lectures. So if the lecture is not exciting, it's probably less than 5%. But Jean-Jacques Rousseau coming up with Francisco Ferrer-Eguardia, and then finally the 11 alternatives to the Prussian industrial, totalitarian, fascist, autocratic dictatorship education that is brainwashing all of our children to be soulless, moralless, anti-solidarity, just dog-eat-dog world. Now, I wouldn't even say they're like conformist individualists, right? You're an individual because you're a good kiss-ass, right? So you kiss ass very well in your own individual way, but you're not actually being a strong sort of, basically do as I say but not as I do. And I'm not, bullies actually do well in life, so eventually those teachers learn to be bullies themselves somewhere down the line. Karen Dunnigan talked about being bullied when she was young, and now she's the bully today. Teacher training school, she says spirituality. She's the one who convinced me to go to Spalding because my spirituality will be developed, and for the next 2.5 years, they sought to crush my spirit and push me down. And I was just supposed to comply, and I did. I did all the work, and I did all the things that they did, but that's still, they wanted me to shuck and jive and to smile while I was doing it. God, I'm not happy about the oppression, and you want me to smile while I'm being oppressed? You didn't convince me. I'm doing it just to get a piece of paper so I can get on out of here. And you didn't let me do that. You didn't play by the rules. You didn't play by your own stupid rules. Okay? I did all your work. I deserve to be progressed, and I'd be the best damn teacher you'd ever see. But you don't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen. You want to know what clout and all these black kids are getting suspended out of school? It's because the strike 3 rule, they're not being obedient. Big surprise that the black kids are not being happily obedient and complicit to their white masses. Big fucking surprise.